35. Vacation in orbit. When space stopped being just for astronauts. The prediction. What we thought. As the Cold War receded and commercial ambition rose, a tantalizing idea took hold in the late 1990s. Ordinary people would travel to space. Not as test pilots or national heroes, but as customers. Space would become a destination. Hotels would orbit Earth. Weightlessness would be an experience you could book. The boundary between science fiction and tourism would finally dissolve. In this future, space wasn't the end of the road. It was the next one. Standing in 1999, this sounded audacious, but newly plausible. Rockets already worked. The question was whether they could be made reliable, affordable, and routine. Why this prediction made sense in 1999, the timing mattered. By the late 1990s, the space shuttle had normalized reusable spacecraft. The Cold War rationale for space programs had faded. Private capital was beginning to eye aerospace. Technology culture was shifting from state-led to entrepreneurial. Space no longer felt exclusively governmental. Aviation had followed this arc before, moving from military experiment to commercial industry. Why not rockets? This belief aligned perfectly with millennium-era optimism that markets would unlock frontiers once reserved for nations. If competition could lower costs, space might finally open to civilians. For younger readers today, it's important to remember how radical this felt. In 1999, space was still remote, expensive, and elite. The idea that civilians might buy tickets felt like a category error until it didn't. Who said it? And where? One of the most influential champions of this vision was Peter Diamandis, who founded the X Prize in 1996. The X Prize was designed to catalyze private spaceflight by offering a large reward for the first non-government team to launch a reusable crewed spacecraft into space twice within 2 weeks. The idea was simple and radical. Instead of funding rockets, fund outcomes. Let competition do the rest. In the late 1990s, this approach felt risky, but visionary. It reframed space not as a prestige project, but as a business opportunity. What actually happened? 2000 to 2025. Space tourism arrived slowly, unevenly, but unmistakably. The early 2000s brought proof. Private teams achieved crewed suborbital flight. The X Prize was won. Momentum shifted. Over the next 2 decades, private companies developed reusable launch systems. Costs per launch dropped dramatically. Civilian passengers reached suborbital space. Orbital tourism, while rare and expensive, occurred. By the 2020s, space tourism was real, though still elite. Flights were not routine holidays, but they existed. Paying customers experienced weightlessness, saw Earth from above, and returned safely. By 2025, space had transitioned from exclusive government domain to early-stage commercial destination. The prediction wasn't about affordability. It was about access. And access arrived. Verdict. Status. Realized. Space tourism exists. While limited and expensive, civilians can and do travel to space. The core prediction, that space would become a destination for non-astronauts, has been fulfilled. Why it played out this way? This prediction succeeded because incentives aligned. Private competition lowered costs. Reusability changed economics. Prestige attracted capital. And the experience itself proved irresistible to a small but willing market. What slowed adoption was physics. Space remains difficult, dangerous, and expensive. There was no shortcut to orbit. But unlike many grand predictions, this one didn't require universal adoption. It only required possibility. Once the first tourists flew, the future crossed a psychological threshold. What this prediction teaches us about the future. This case reveals an important lesson. Some futures arrive by redefining who is allowed to participate. Space tourism didn't democratize space, it commercialized it. And that was enough to change the narrative. In 1999, space symbolized unreachable grandeur. In 2026, it symbolizes ambition with a price tag. The future delivered orbit, not for everyone, but for anyone who could pay. One sentence takeaway. Space didn't become cheap, but it did become available.